The term awakened or awakening is used a lot in spiritual circles and in the spiritual world, but there's a lot of confusion about what awakening really is. So in this video, I want to clarify that for you, so stay tuned. Hi there, I'm Lisa ENGLES-WITTER, and welcome to my channel where I help spiritual seekers just like you to get simple answers and non-new agey answers to deep spiritual questions. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do that. I put out new videos every week, and be sure to hit that notifications button so that you get notified every time a new video comes out. Awakening is this term that's used really often in spiritual circles, in the spiritual world, and a lot of people will say, or I've heard, I should say, a lot of people say, oh, I've had a spiritual awakening, or when I had my spiritual awakening, and then they, talk about some experience that they had. But I want to really clarify here, what is awakening? What does it mean? And where does that term come from? The term comes from Eastern spiritual tradition, and in yoga philosophy, this term awakening, to become awakened or to wake up, simply means to wake up to the true nature of who you really are. So let's sort of unpack this a little bit, because this is where a lot of people in the New Age spiritual world or alternative spiritual start to reinterpret what it means to wake up to the true nature of who you really are. It might get mistaken to mean your authentic self, which is still a construct, a mental construct, and not really the true nature of who you are. So in order to understand the true nature of who you are, you need to know who you are not. And that is part of the process of awakening, is an understanding, first a conceptual understanding of who you are not, but then a true gnosis, a knowing and waking up to the true nature of who you are. So in yoga philosophy, part of the teachings tell us that our suffering is caused by ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of knowledge of who we really are. So the solution to understanding, to knowing who we really are, is to wake up from the ignorance. And that's done, there's several practices that are used in order to, as pointing out instructions, to guide us to this awareness of who we really are. So awakening, to wake up, means to wake up from mental constructs, from beliefs, from thoughts of who you thought you were. To wake up to the to your true identity, to knowing what your true identity is, to recognizing not as a mental construct, but as a felt knowing that you are not your body. You are not your thoughts or emotions. You are not your mental constructs. You are not your social conditioning or your cultural conditioning. You're none of that. You are pure awareness. Now, it's easy to rattle off these things and to say, oh, this is who you really are. But in yoga, it's not about believing any of these concepts. It's actually having a known, felt sense of this. And my suspicion is that sometimes people get confused between an experience that they have that they think is awakening and the actual process of awakening, because awakening is a process in which you will, of course, have an experience, but it's not a one-time experience. It's something that happens gradually, sometimes over time, or it can be disruptive and happen in a matter of moments, which apparently is what happened to Eckhart Tolle, right? So the interesting thing about awakening is that from an outside perspective, it might not even look like you're awakened, because it's an internal experience. It's a felt, known experience. So if someone tells you, oh, I'm awakened, you can't really argue that because you don't know what their internal experience is. If they are having the experience that they are pure awareness and that they are not their body, their thoughts, their emotions, their mental constructs, well, then they are awakened. Now, the interesting thing about awakening and being awakened, it doesn't mean that you're actually liberated from your mental constructs, from your stories. So you can actually be awakened, meaning you are aware of your true identity and you have a felt experience of your true identity, but you still have those stories. You still have your mental constructs that still trigger you, perhaps. So you can be someone who's awakened and still be a total asshole, unfortunately. So that is part of the reason why we see people out there who are wonderful teachers and are awakened, but still might be jerks. And that is because they haven't completed the process of liberation. And liberation is a deconstruction process. It's deconstructing all of the mental stories, the thoughts, the constructs, the mental constructs that we have and that we live our lives by. Whereas awakening is waking up to our true identity. And I want to point you towards someone that has amazing teachings on this, and his name is Christopher Wallace, and he's written a book that's called Tantra Illuminated. And he just has a really beautiful way of very simply describing and explaining what is awakening and what is liberation. So I just put that out there because I really respect him as a teacher and consider him one of my teachers on the path, and want to point you towards some teachings and some texts that can really help you if you think that you are on this spiritual path. So the final thing that I want to say about the process of awakening, of waking up to the truth of who you really are, is the importance that it has on your day-to-day life, in your actions and your interactions, in how you relate to yourself and how you relate to others. When we don't know our true identity, when we are operating from a false sense of ourself, we are making misinformed decisions, which therefore means that we're more than likely taking misinformed actions, and it's those actions which will create the results in our life. But when we understand and when we know the truth of who we are, when we are definitely not mistaken about our identity, we take actions that are based on the truth, based on the true nature of who we really are. And those actions are always going to be for the benefit not only of ourselves, but of others. They're going to be unselfish actions that benefit the whole. So this project of awakening is critical, not just because it's a spiritual thing to do, but because it results ultimately in contributing to the evolution and the healing of our humanity in this planet. So while awakening can happen at any time and doesn't require necessarily anything, more often than not, you might need a little bit of spiritual practice. So I just want to invite you to join me over in my Facebook group, Spiritual Practice for Turbulent Times. It's a free Facebook group. The link is in the description below. And I lead 2 live practice sessions every week. When you join the group, you can join those sessions. So thank you so much for joining me in today's video, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video together. Namaste.